Welcome back. We finally made it to Washington. So, what I've set up here is 140k men split into 5 corps with approximately 14 infantry units per corps, 2 units of cavalry, 2 units of snipers, and 6 units of artillery. The 5th Corps gets a little bit of a mess. There's some extra artillery and stuff in there, but if you want to see more detail on that, check out my camp video. Go into a lot more detail there. So my basic setup for this fort is to get my artillery in position on the hill where I can flank it, and set up some infantry up there as well, where I can come in on the side that has some cover. And while I'm doing this, I will have my cavalry and my snipers go to the bottom of the map and intercept the majority of the reinforcements down there and prevent them from getting into the fort. So I had tried a couple different things to take out this fort. Originally, I wanted to see if I could just recreate what I had done at the last 2 battles and win this battle with 90% artillery. I found that didn't work for a variety of reasons. The primary one was that the vision around the forts is very hard to get. It's almost impossible to get without being spotted. So the only way I could try and do a plan like that would be to have a unit taking fire the entire time. The second problem is that getting sight lines on the fort is also very difficult, specifically the artillery in the fort. So you can see where I'm moving the infantry right now. Like originally I tried setting up a bunch of artillery there and getting vision on the fort and then just trying to kill the enemy artillery. It basically doesn't work. The fort has I guess I'll call it an elevation sightline blocker, which will cause your artillery to almost walk right up to it to try and fire at it. So that option pretty much went right out the door. I also tried just walking some cheap musket units straight across the river, and in at least one test I had 2 units cross at the same time, and they made it about halfway to the fort, and both units got routed with about 800 losses total in the space of a few seconds. So that gives you an indication of how strong the enemy artillery is in that fort, even though there's only 2 units there. There's also, on either side of the fort, there are scoped scoped rifle skirmishers, which you don't always face. I think that was also part of the problem. So those units probably walked across the river, got hit by 3 infantry brigades, 2 sniper brigades, and 2 units of artillery. And, well, 800 casualties from that is not that surprising. But so, instead of anything like that, I'm going to be going with my current approach, where I'm sort of going to set up a full surround, and then I'm going to try and hit the fort from all sides and just route it really quickly. At the bottom, you can see I've routed 2 infantry brigades. I should probably actually be switching my snipers over to that 3rd brigade right now. So if I did that, I think I could have stopped it from getting to the fort entirely, but oh well. If I can get the artillery down there and keep those other units out of the fort, that will make things go a little easier. One advantage if you do take the casualties to just go straight across the fort and melee your way through it is that you will be, basically you can virtually have the fort taken over by about now, so you can just kill off the couple extra units that come across the river, and then you can move yourself down towards the river and basically be in the trenches before the next phase even opens. But my army is definitely not set up for that sort of thing. This would say this is the one battle in the game where my army setup is just not really good for it. Like, it would be a lot easier to have a really strong melee army right now and just, roll over all these defenses as opposed to what I'm going to have to do, where I really have to have absolutely overwhelming numbers. And actually, even when I get into melee, I'm really focusing on fire more than I am the melee itself to get through the fortifications. Just because most of my army, the very best units of my army have maybe 35 melee. And they're all armed with rifles, which don't have very good melee values. So, just not something I usually specialize in, which outside of this battle is generally not a problem. Making some good use of the skirmisher cavalry down there. I don't use them too often. They're hard to find scenarios where you can use them well, but this is one where they can be very useful. The main benefit is you can get them in and out really quick. So I can get in, get the pot shots off, and then leave before I get fired at by that enemy infantry. If I had melee cavalry, I could do the same thing with their pistols, but you have to get much closer, and it's just harder to make work. So I've set up the line that I'm basically going to use. I'm going to be approaching initially from the east, preferably that one musket unit is going to be taking the artillery fire. I don't know for sure if there's actual rotation time on artillery and fortifications. I think there is. I think they just rotate really quickly. So I'm hoping they're going to fire. I'm going to get them to fire on those units farther away in the east, and then I'm going to get the units across the river without taking the shell fire with no cover. So we've got rid of the first fortification, and now you can see how close I am to this fort, and I still cannot see the enemy cannon almost at all. Bringing up the cavalry to route this unit so I can get into a position to almost completely surround the fort. And right now I'm giving orders to shoot the enemy artillery because from what I found, shooting the artillery is a faster way to route it than actually getting into melee with it. Like I don't know if it's counting as flanking or what, but it's inordinately effective compared to the other options, at least for my army. So hopefully we'll get all these units in range. They can fire on that artillery, route it, and then from there we can take care of the infantry. My main goal is to get that artillery routing, even if it only routes for 20-30 seconds and then goes in the middle where I can't hit it. Then I really don't want to take canister from those units. Even if they're only 2-star, they still really hurt. And meanwhile, I'm going to be using my cavalry to try and keep those 2 units basically permanently routing, because then I don't have to worry about them. This is another case where the Spencers are really useful for this unit because you can move them forward, hit space, fire, hit space to get them to reload really quickly, and then move them forward quick again, and then they'll fire. So you can really keep a unit just permanently routing if you spend the micro to do it. So we've gotten the first cannon battery, having the units in the west target the second one, and you could see for a second there that 20-pounder still can't shoot that unit on the artillery unit on the west. It'd have to move basically onto the wall to be able to hit it. So the units in the east, I'm basically just telling to move through the fort. I will tell a couple units to charge at the last minute, but I've found that it's more effective to get a couple units into melee and then put volleys basically into the melee, into their backs. The morale damage seems to be more effective for me than, instead of just charging all 6 of those units on the same guy, it seems more effective for my army to do it this way. So we lose a skirmisher unit, not a big deal. So I charge a few of them. So once we get that unit out of the wall, the rest of it's pretty simple. Snipers are still managing with everything down south. And like usual, this video, all the battle sections of this video have been sped up to 2x. Otherwise, this battle took me about 6 hours to play. So I don't want to talk for 6 hours. I don't think you guys want to watch for 6 hours, so accelerating it. So we basically got the fort at this point. I also try and jump units into the fortifications when I can. Even if they would potentially be flanked by that unit that's still in the fortifications in the southwest, they'll use up less stamina, and then they get the huge cover bonuses. That's the other thing worth mentioning is part of the reason the all-artillery strategy doesn't work in this battle is the fortifications are just incredible in most sections. You know, you're looking at 100% cover and usually like as much as 60 or 70% damage resistance on top of that. So it just takes far too long to actually just shoot units out over and over and over. You can still kill enemy artillery if you have enough set up. It'll work, but it's just not time efficient. So at this point, we've gotten the fort, and we're starting to set up for what we're going to do for the next section of this battle, which is we're going to set up on this hill above the river and just shoot everything that gets near us. And once we clear, we'll wait for the battle to open up a little bit more, and when it opens up, then we'll start flanking from both sides, and then eventually crush the center fort in the middle. So I'm not focusing on the skirmisher cavalry too much, but I'm trying to get the artillery out of there. I don't want it to wander off and then shoot me at some point. Like usual, my plan is still get rid of the artillery, then move in when I can manage it. Basically, anything that isn't a fort, I'll do that too. Managed to get a capture of some of those scoped rifles, but it doesn't matter anymore. In some ways, every time I capture an infantry unit, it's just reducing my total number of kills, which isn't really an issue, but I just wanted to see if I could beat Christoph 42's million infantry campaign that he posted, I think, a year or so ago. So the more we can get, the better. There's definitely some things I do in this battle to try and get more kills that are definitely not necessary. I would say if you were coming in with a smaller army, you would probably just want to try and get the forts themselves, and you would largely try and leave everything else in the fortifications and ignore them. Because if they're sitting in the fortifications, they don't do anything to you, and as far as I can tell, everything doesn't come in on day 2. So no reason to get rid of them. So one thing I should have commented on there is the snipers. You can see they're both spotted, and there's going to be artillery in the area. I think it's moving still at this point because nothing actually starts in the fortifications. But I should have gotten them out of that area a little bit sooner, just so they didn't have any chance of getting hit. So I'm going to be sending the majority of my reinforcements down to the eastern edge of the map. My goal is to basically have them in position so that when Fort Slocum opens up, we can take it almost immediately, because a lot of units spawn on top of Fort Slocum, move to the west to try and engage your units over there, and then as the battle progresses, they'll gradually move back to the fort. But if you get the timing right, you can often take that fort when it only has maybe 1 or 2 infantry units in it, or sometimes even when there's only 1 artillery unit, and you'll save yourself a lot of casualties if you can pull that off. So my cavalry are going after that last scoped rifle unit. We're pretty much set up on that farm, and the goal is to knock those units back and get ourselves hidden again, so we can start getting rid of the enemy artillery. I'm also sending all the 20-pounders from these reinforcements over to the west. I'm going to set them all up on the hill and use them to knock out what I can. I'll just send 10. There's a little bit. I'm not sure if there's really less artillery in the east, but it's harder to get to. So I'm going to send my weaker counter battery over that way. This is also where you can see where, if I was further forward with my infantry at this time, I could have pushed right across the river right away and basically stop those units before they get into the fortifications. But instead, I'm going to take the more patient approach, and I'm going to clean up everything in the corner down here so nothing is behind my lines, and then see what I can push into from there. And you can also see there's all these units sitting in the open down here. They can't see me. They sort of want to come forward to try and take the fort, but they mostly end up milling around a lot and getting shot by my artillery. So we're going to wear those numbers down so we don't have to spend our own infantry to try and get rid of them as much as possible. You can afford to take a decent number of casualties on day 1, but especially in the UI mod, the Union artillery that comes in on day 2 is extremely dangerous. So the bigger you can keep your units, the better. I had originally come into this battle with only 2 cores at 1800, and then I had 2 more at 1600. I thought that would be enough. And then I had sort of, my 5th corps was mostly 2500 man musket units. And I played through that and took more casualties than I wanted, and was not like day 2 was a little rough, so I decided to switch things up and get everything up to 1800. So I'm swinging those infantry units and the cavalry units down across the river. I'm going to see if I can get across before those other units swing south. I think I needed to have done this a little bit earlier. Definitely, if I'd crossed the river as soon as I killed those last skirmishers, I think I could have gotten the cavalry back there. Getting them back there is nice, but not necessary. There's not a lot of units back there until the enemy cavalry spawns in, and you can grab a couple wagons, maybe kill some artillery if it's wandering around back there. But also not necessary because the next phase is going to open up, and it's going to give you another stretch of trenches that aren't occupied, so you can just walk right in again. The AI seems really hesitant to occupy those for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's if they were to occupy those, this defense would be a lot harder to break. Like, this is, I would say, one of the better designed defensive setups for the AI in the game. There's not, when it's fully manned, there's not a lot of weak points outside of the isolated fort in the northwest and that isolated fort in the northeast. You could still, edge camp, sneak in through the sides, that sort of stuff. It'll still work. But in comparison to some other defensive battles that just turn into a joke because you can completely exploit the AI, it's a little harder to do here. So you can also see I'm completely ignoring all these Union units in the middle. I don't care about them at all. They're just sitting out there, and you could fight your way through them, but I just don't see any reason to. In the next phase, they're all going to leave that location and come into the center, and then my artillery will handle them. Making sure to leave some infantry units in the fields up there because eventually the AI will send some units up there, and I want to have something in position because otherwise they can walk up there and then I only have artillery. I ended up aborting the flank attack in the southwest. Just didn't think I was going to make it through in time, so I figured I was just going to wait to the next phase, get rid of some more, get all my counter battery working. Had to split off a unit from in the north there to stop that 3-star unit from walking up and going after my artillery. And here's my first big mistake. I moved the cavalry too close with the lines that I drew and did not notice they were taking fire, and lost half of my one unit and the major general. There usually isn't a infantry unit down there. Like, I would say, like, the reason I moved the cavalry so far forward, or at least sort of planned to, was that oftentimes there's only an artillery unit that's trying to move into position down there, so you can run the cavalry down there and then just nail it before it even gets into the fortifications, just take it out for free. But this time there was an infantry unit there, and I paid for it. So you can see the infantry unit coming in the north. I actually probably should have moved my snipers up here just to get him out of there, because every time this happens, I take artillery fire, because they start revealing units up there. And it's not that big a deal, but it adds up. Mostly on my own artillery from the collateral damage. But we get rid of that general. And we'll get these units back out of there. I should probably also just push all my artillery further southwest, and then it would be less likely to get spotted by anything up there, and it would be further away from any of the artillery in the main fort, which is usually where I'm taking the fire from. So I'd kind of like to knock this veteran unit out of the fortifications. So that's what I'm sort of setting up for. I don't want to push too hard with the infantry because I don't want to trigger a phase early by getting too far south. There's a couple of different cases like this. Like at one point in the very first phase, I had tried putting my cavalry in the, I would basically get them behind those routing units and hit them from there, but I found that usually triggered the phase early. And sometimes you'd make it behind the enemy reinforcements, and sometimes you wouldn't. You'd lose your cavalry instantly. So I don't want those units in the east to go down too far. So I'm sort of setting up like I'm going to go after this unit, and then I eventually realize that I'm just not going to do enough damage, and I'm starting to take artillery fire, so I need to back everything up. Bringing my snipers down so I get vision of that cannon unit. Trying to send these skirmishers over to try and find where that artillery unit is. And then I start sliding stuff around the board edge. At this point, well, you can see the fun errors you sometimes get when running in development mode if you manage to tell a unit to go off the map. But I start sliding units around the side. I sort of forget what my original plan was, which was to go after the fort. The problem with doing this is even if I got them down there, I'd be in this weird place where I can't really go too far west because more units are going to show up down there, and I don't want to sit on the board edge because there's units that spawn to the east of me, and I want to let those units go past me. So eventually I realized this and sent all my units back up. So I think this is the third corps that's starting to come in. In terms of the way I deployed my corps, the first corps to come in was pretty much my worst one. I had some good artillery in it, but I had a lot more musket units and weaker 2-star units in there. That's because I just knew like they're going to do a lot. They're going to assault that main fort, and they're going to be doing a lot of the work assaulting Fort Stevens in the center. And then I have my, I think, second best corps comes in the north, and my best corps comes in after them in the north. And then in the south, I have my worst corps and my third best corps. So I get lucky, they send an artillery unit over there. I try and hop into the fortifications because I think I should be able to shoot it from there, but the angles are weird, and for whatever reason I can't hit it, and so I have to come out. My original plan had been to send my best corps in sort of last-ish, so it took the least amount of casualties, and I was going to send it in down south because I was real worried about how I was going to manage with day 2, because I remembered from last time I played this battle, I remembered it being pretty hard to win on day 2 in the south, and so I wanted to have my absolute best corps there. And I think I would say the conventional wisdom from other players I talked to was that you couldn't get units into the south on the second day. There wasn't a way to phase them over like you can on the first day, but I found out that's not true. You can definitely do it, which makes the south part much easier. Also, when you have 5 corps, you get a bunch of extra reinforcements down there. I finally realized that unit was visible and taking fire from the artillery that had been in that fence line, sort of in the north. And unfortunately, it takes several hundred casualties there before I realize it. But that's probably, I'll say, big mistake number 2 so far. But got everything sort of piled up in this mess. We'll just be able to go take the fort after the phase opens. Yeah, everything is going pretty well so far. When I don't have artillery to target, I try and get my long-range artillery to fire at a unit in the open rather than one that's in the fortifications, because I'm going to do a lot more damage to them. Save yourself a lot of ammo that way. Or, well, you'll get more out of it. It's worth noting you don't have to have any of these forts captured until I think there's, so let's see, there's going to be a phase where eventually you go down south, and then the phase after that is the one that you have to cap all 3 forts captured up here. So my goal is to get the first fort in the first phase. I get the Fort Slocum in the phase that it opens up, and then my goal is to have basically the entire position more or less surrounded by the time I go down south. That means when I come back up north, I have about 3 hours left to take Fort Stevens in the center. You have to have the contested timer cleared before that 3 hours ends. I had a really fun test run where I took it 2 minutes too late, and so with 2 minutes on the contested timer remaining, I lost the battle. That was real fun. So don't do that. So a fun bug that Johnny found the other day is when a unit runs out of ammunition, it will, well, there's two things going on there. When a unit runs out of ammunition, it can stop firing because there's some logic that tries to, basically it's trying to get a unit that is out of ammunition to charge if it can, but then sometimes there's other logic that prevents the charge from going, and then instead of firing at something, the unit's out of ammunition just sits there. You can see this in my Mansfield battle with some of the artillery. It just stops firing once it's out of ammunition unless I give it a manual order. So it's a pretty obscure case, but something to keep in mind. The other thing we discovered around there is that ammunition can go negative. So once you hit 0 ammunition, oh right, this is the great part why my avatar gets wounded in this battle. From taking 9 losses from collateral damage, down we go. I guess thankfully I don't die, but I'll be sitting the rest of this battle out. I thought that was, while very annoying, I also thought that was hilarious at the time, so I can't complain about that one too much. Anyways, go back to that story. So ammunition, when it hits 0, you'd expect it to stay at 0, but it can actually go negative. So if you have a artillery unit that's just blasting away, it's actually just piling up more and more negative ammo, and then when a supply wagon walks over, you have to refill all of that and its normal ammo. I'm not quite sure how that works with the bar going up. That might be why it takes a while. It seems like it goes really slow initially. I'm not really sure how that interacts, but fixing that is on the list for the next version of the UI mod. So now that the fort is opened up, we're bringing our extra stuff down and we're going to send everything over. And by the time we get down there, we should, so I'm not going to send them straight there. I'm going to sort of set them up north and sort of line them all up. My goal is to, whatever is down there, I want to have all my infantry arrive more or less at the same time. And that should help reduce casualties. I've done it before where I just kind of threw everything in one at a time and took way more casualties than I should have, doing that to, very little surprise. And as you can see in the southwest, there is an opening. We're going to send our infantry through there, and eventually we're going to start putting some 24-pounders and some snipers down there, and then we'll roll up the whole line from there. But at the moment, we've still got plenty of stuff to kill in the center. We don't need to rush that too much. I had sent my Spencer cavalry back up towards the fort to both regain its condition and also to refill its ammunition because it had run out. And that's when I remember, oh wait, there's cavalry that spawns there that I should probably worry about. So this is kind of a bad scenario where I've got 3 units of very large cavalry and they can see my snipers. The good news is for whatever reason, the unit AI is doing something. I'm not really sure what it's trying to do, but interrupting its AI basically caused it to not fire at me for some reason, which I guess I'm very grateful for because I didn't really want to take the losses on those snipers, but not sure what was going on there. Don't send your snipers first if you're doing the same thing I am. Send some other units first to get rid of the cavalry, then you won't have to worry about that, as you might not get as lucky as I did. So the phase changes also seem to, I'm not sure if it's generating more units or if existing units decide to just refocus on where they're trying to defend, but it seems like pretty much every phase they send another artillery unit over there for me to destroy, which is very nice for me. Probably not their best plan, but... So I'm shifting units over a little bit because if something routes, I don't want it to route into the northwest if they see the units in the south and try and get away from that by going into an open area. So even though it's a pretty thin line, I try and keep units in that area so that anything that retreats goes back into the center. It'll just save me a lot of trouble with having to pin those units with detached skirmishers and get rid of them. You can see some of the units moving into the center from the eastern fort. This is why I didn't want to be on the board edge there. I guess theoretically I could have gone down there, rolled up the line, and then fought all this as across the stream, I guess. But I don't know. I don't like the timing window on that. Seems bad. It seems like really easy to, like, you're sort of fighting in the open, and you're probably going to be in a scenario where you have units in front of you and behind you. So I just don't think it's worthwhile. So at this point, I realize the fort is empty. So there's only that artillery unit moving in. So I'm basically, well, doing what I said I wasn't going to do, which was just have units dash in one at a time. I think I can make the window work. So that's why I'm risking it. I'm sending everything in, sending 2 infantry units running, sending the skirmishers. Because if I can get into that fort before anything else comes back, I can save myself a lot of trouble. And I'm hoping I can even get it before that artillery unit sets up. But the upside is several of those units tried to go into the fortifications, which slowed them down. I can see that our infantry unit coming. The goal is if I can grab those fortifications before that infantry unit gets in there, you know, I can deal with the artillery. That's not a huge problem. So they made it into one of the fortifications. I was hoping they'd go for the northeast one. So this is not great, but if I can get in there, then I can take care of it. And I'm basically willing to accept extra cavalry losses to just take this fort for free. Well, the cavalry losses hurt. You don't really need them on day 2, though there's a couple places they're useful. Having the stronger infantry. Not sure what's going on there. Unit flag is in one place. The sprites are in a different place. So I've got my cavalry behind, getting some vision. Their cavalry came over, cost me some losses. But we've gotten to melee. I don't think it doesn't, yeah, based on the damage, it did not get a canister round off. We take some losses there, but we've gotten into the fortification. Now we've sent the dismounted scout unit to just barely get in there and start getting vision on the fort. I want to try and clear out that artillery if I can, though it's going to prove difficult. But our mad dash was successful. We managed to get in. You can see that that fort was about to be full of a bunch of infantry. And now we're going to be able to get into it before it can do anything. Cavalry took care of that artillery super quick. So we just probably captured that fort for, what, 200 men? 300 at most? I think when I took it on my test run, it probably cost me 2,000 or 3,000. Didn't play that particularly well either, but, you know, stealing the fort from them when it's empty is always nice. And we get a supply wagon for a bonus. Now we can just send the cavalry into the corner and let it rest up a little bit. So I'm not being too aggressive with my infantry yet in the southwest. I sort of want to get them in position and set up, and I really want to get some artillery behind them before I really start moving forward. I'd also like to get some snipers down there, but they have really good targets in the center at the moment, so I'm not moving them forward yet. Though, really, yeah, they should be going right now, because they basically run out of targets in the middle. Should probably send the 24-pounders down there right now as well, but I think it takes me a little longer to get to it. And then this stupid cavalry decides that it's going to walk into the open, because, again, I should have left a unit there. If I'd left a unit there, they would have run into it, bounced backwards, and they wouldn't have to deal with them at all. But I left a gap in the line, and so something went through it. But this section of the battle is going real great. I'm going to be able to run down some more routers with the cavalry over there. And unfortunately, I don't have any cavalry over here to counter theirs. If I had brought some of the units over there, maybe that would have been a good idea. But slowly killing the artillery on this side, and then we'll be able to move some other stuff in position. So I'm wildly ahead of schedule on the east. I'm probably a little behind schedule in the west, and this cavalry is going to make that situation worse. I was expecting to still be working on taking the fort at this point, but now that we've gotten it, we can just start setting up to let those units recover a little bit, and then we can move all the melee units down and break through the last fortification and then go from there. So I want to see if I can hit that. Sort of being real careful because I know there's... Basically, I'm trying to plan around the issue that because the weapon, the gun that I'm trying to target is on top of the fort, there's some weird sight blocking or elevation blocking. And so I want to be able to click on it without actually accidentally telling my unit to go forward. And so I'm really looking at the movement lines that result when I click on it to try and notice if I get a movement order as opposed to just a fire order. Fortunately, it's kind of hard to tell because the line colors are pretty similar. Like, it would have been real nice if the movement orders were a different color than the fire orders or something, but... And our first instance of Ghost Cav. I'm also kind of waiting for the enemy reinforcements to come in. I don't want to go encircle them too much from the west before that happens, because I don't want to have units hitting me in the back. I could probably have pushed in already, but I figure I'll just let them in. If you are not on Legendary, you can probably just push into the fort sooner. Like, you could just, instead of doing this whole surround thing I'm doing, you could probably just hammer in from the front more, and then you can basically have the fort in that defensive line before those reinforcements come in. And that's a much easier way to play it in general, probably. You could probably also do it in Legendary on the in the base game, where the artillery is doing way less damage. But I just found that it was just extremely unpleasant trying to do that, so still mucking around with that stupid cavalry unit down there. Decide to focus my fire on the cavalry unit just to get... I don't want that happening anywhere else. And I have to be countermanding that artillery order soon. I'm not quite sure what I was planning there. So that's one advantage. If you can get the your cavalry into the rear in that very first phase, you can basically take that vision point for free and just sit on top of it and have vision of most of the inside of the fort for most of the battle. You have to be a little careful when the cavalry comes over, though. They'll usually find you, even though they're not super aggressive about it. Yet another Ghost Cav. It could be worse. It could be going somewhere with it to cause me problems, but it's, I just want this unit gone so I don't have to spend any more attention on this side of the battle right now. Also, while that unit's down there, I don't want to send snipers down there. I don't want to send artillery down there. Yeah. When I was talking about I should countermand those orders, that's what happened. Didn't realize that one of those guys was going forward. Watching it now, I don't know how I didn't see it. I should have seen it. You could see all those artillery moving forward, but most of them stopped. So, not quite sure what was going on. Very frustrating to lose, what? 8. No, probably lost 5 or 6. 5 or 6 20-pounders because of that. But, gotta be real careful about that. There's another change I'm working on where what I'm going to do is, if you give your artillery an order that is going to make it move, it's going to force it to move to be able to hit the target, I'm going to pop up, do one of the little notifiers in the top left that also makes a sound, and basically it's going to tell you this unit is moving to be able to fire at the target. Still won't countermand the order. I mean, it's a valid order. It's the only way the game can execute what you're telling it to do, is move the unit forward. But it'll at least give you a little warning that, hey, if you didn't think your artillery was supposed to be moving right now, go take a look, see why it's doing this. So hopefully that'll be a little bit nicer quality of life to prevent this type of crap. So we're pretty much in position in the south to start slamming in through there. And I finally bring the snipers down. I think I should have done this earlier. I should have brought the 24-pounders down earlier. If I'd had them down there, they might have just routed that cavalry unit before it went through the lines as well. That would have been a good idea, but focused on other things at the time. Much easier to see what you're doing in retrospect. See, I don't have much infantry up in the north anymore. I'm already sort of setting up for my giant encirclement. The infantry doesn't do a whole lot for most of the battle, but trying to see if I can get some more vision on some artillery down there, because I know there's a couple more units. And I spot that unit and decide that I'm going to go after it. So I'm getting back up on horseback, because I want to be able to melee it. Would have preferred to stay hidden, not take that shot. Other thing that's worth noting, so part of the reason I'm being so free with those two Spencer units is my plan is to get one of them killed off on the first day, because in camp I had set up all 5 of my corps to have no extra unit slots, with the intention of I would have the 5 full corps on this day, and then I would get one of those units killed that I didn't really need on the second day, and then be able to swap units around. So that's why I'm basically just charging in with those guys. Don't care about them too much because I want one of them to die anyways. It turns out that does not actually work. The game still thinks the slot is full until the battle ends. So I'm going to try and move stuff around in camp and discover that that was a waste of time. I think what I would recommend is just leave a slot open in one of the corps. I think all your units come into this battle, though I'm not positive, and there's no way to check in camp because there's no camp phase after this. I guess I could have double-checked that, are these 4 corps full of everything, but I didn't do it at the time. So we're pretty much on pace. We've gotten the 2 forts. We've got most of the surround set up. We've gotten a lot of their artillery. All we have to do is, I'm sort of closing the bottom side, and then we'll have a more or less complete surround for when we come back after the first southern phase. Could probably be I probably could have started pushing in on the west already, but because I was slow in bringing those snipers over and that artillery over, it's not really in position. And if I'd had that in position earlier, then I could have pushed this salient in earlier and probably been better, had to rush less in the last phase, taking fewer casualties. At this point I realized I accidentally brought down a 20-pounder instead of a 24-pounder. Not the end of the world, but I really wanted the 2 24-pounders there to just blow units out of the woods when I need to. The other thing is I'm close to the end of the phase, so I kind of want to start getting units off of the board edge because I don't actually want to transfer units down south this phase. Because there's Union units in trenches and stuff, and if you bring them down, then sometimes you can get caught and there's just no way out, and you just lose the unit, or have to hope you route through the enemy lines or something like that. So I'm trying to get my stuff a little off the board edge so it doesn't come over. So I'm still trying to hit that unit. I'm not sure where you have to be to hit it. I've hit it from before on this hill, but I just can't seem to find it. Also, as a playstyle habit, I should probably stop issuing those orders and then immediately go somewhere else instead of watching where those artillery units go. That would also probably have saved that unit from walking into the open if I hadn't immediately gone somewhere else and then not gone back to it. I should probably, I should give all my orders while I'm paused, and then I should come back to that artillery unit and give that order and then watch that area. Also, you'll notice even with the 2x speed that I'm playing this back on, there's a lot of pausing in this battle. It's just whole lot going on, a lot of timing needs to work out, and if you want to do it with lower casualties, you either need to play on half speed or, well, you need to play on half speed, you need to pause a lot, or you need to be way better at keeping everything in control than I am. So when I talked about stuff moving down for the phase, I had forgotten that there's an extra phase, so I didn't need to worry about it this time. I need to worry about it next time. But you can see, once again, there's a phase change, and the AI decides to move all its units around again. And it does get some reinforcements, which we're in position to do a little bit about. I kind of wish I had some snipers here right now, but oh well. So you can really sort of, yeah, you can see all those units decided to walk forward. It's a good thing that phase change happened. Otherwise, I was about to walk another 3 units straight into melee or into rifle range. That would have been great. Here I messed up. I should not have sent the skirmishers forward. I should have let the infantry keep walking so I could have killed the artillery. I kind of don't care about the infantry. Like, the infantry will die like everything else. I don't want more artillery up by that fort. I'm going to end up getting most of it, which is also fine, I suppose. But I think I could have organized that whole thing down there a little bit better so that I could be in position. Like, I'd like that last infantry unit down there to be a little farther north, and then I could just run the cavalry and kill the artillery unit, and then trap the infantry and kill it off. But didn't really plan this out too well. So sending the snipers from the west over a little bit to try and catch one of the artillery units down there. I was hoping some more units would leave the trenches on the east there, but they decided that the ones I would have preferred to leave did not leave, so I'm not able to just walk straight in there. But this is going well. Cleared up the space to, by backing my units up, I cleared up the space to let those infantry units move so I can get the cavalry in there. And now we know that we're not going to get spawned on top of. We can bring all these units over. If I'd memorized that a little bit better, I probably could, again, could have attacked that area more. They hopefully moved another artillery unit into range, so I'm backing those guys out. I'm not really sure why he's getting what that artillery unit is firing at, but I don't want to have anything in take fire while that guy's still active. So the unit that I'm, wanted to take the casualties that's the unit I was planning on getting killed off. It just shattered, so mission complete. So yeah, more or less on schedule at this point. I'd kind of like to start collapsing the 2 wings. I'm a little sad that those units are in the fortifications in the east. But we'll be able to wrap the west really easily, so once we get that started to push, we'll be in good shape. Debated trying to fall back there, but didn't want to fall back into my artillery. And wasn't paying attention to the timer, and so I didn't get everything off the board edge. And now I have some cavalry stuck up here. Not the best. Dismount the one we can to hide them. In terms of the actual plan for this battle, this section of the battle, I'm going to be going to the south board edge in both cases. In the west, you really don't want to attack across that river uphill into that fort. That'll end very poorly. But thankfully, the bottom fortification close to the river isn't manned, and the one behind it, if you have units move directly along the board edge and are in column, they can't get shot by it. If they're moving in line, they will get shot, but if you issue the order from far enough out, you can squeeze through, and if they're not quite close enough to get trigger the force you into line formation. In the east, there's no convenient breakthrough point like that, but you can still hit that one fortification on the very end and then roll up the line from there. My goal in this phase is just to take the eastern fort and get into a position where I can hit the western fort from both sides. I'm going to mostly take it with units that are going to come down from the top. Trying to keep hidden and hopefully not trigger any AI logic. But the cannons have enough range to get knocked out of their movement logic, which is actually good for me because that infantry unit just keeps going, and now I can distract with the shock cavalry. I get shot from a ridiculous distance from that fortification. I think I should have been able to get considerably closer to it before taking infantry fire, but now we get to kill an artillery unit for free, which is always fun. So despite that not being planned at all, that worked out pretty well. I'm not sure I could recommend it. No idea if the AI will respond that way every time. If that infantry unit decides to go up after you, basically they're just going to lose your cavalry. Or you make a mad dash to the east and try and get routed through the fortifications on that side. I don't know what else you'd do, because you have nowhere to go. So you can see I'm using those Spencers to get off as many shots as I can. Take a lot of losses on the melee cavalry there, but oh well. Much rather, like, that's a very worthy trade for a 3-star artillery unit. See, I'm sneaking everything around here. So this 5th Corps has a lot of extra weird rookie units in it. Like, most of them are muskets. See, I broke out a line there and they got shot, but they made it. They didn't rout, so acceptable. So this 5th Corps has a lot of weird stuff in it. It's mostly musket units, but it also has a lot of 10-pounder units that are rookies as well, and these rookie snipers. The rookie snipers, well, they aren't great. There's a lot of cases in this battle where it's really useful to be able to hit things out of range, and especially on day 2. Like, even though they aren't great, they are enough to, you know, if you're shooting artillery in the flanks or in the rear, it's enough to get them to rout, and that'll save me a lot of losses in the long run. And here we can just start damaging the morale on this guy from behind. See, they're not doing a ton of damage. Not really terribly effective, but doing it for free. So once I get everything stacked up there, I'll just smash that fortification. Over here, I kind of want to roll up the line just to sort of damage those units and maybe destroy them if I can. The more units I clear out, the more we'll try and go over there in later phases, and the less that are going to be standing on top of the fort. And the more beat up those units are going to be as well, so. So at this point, there's enough units over here I don't want to have to deal with trying to bypass that line, so I'm just going to send my infantry over on a line, clear it out. Got to be careful so I don't slide into artillery range there. A little disorganized in the east. I probably should have been ready to just have smashed through at that point. Just north of where their general is, there is an artillery unit. It's sort of in a weird spot. You basically have to get within rifle range to be able to see it. It's very annoying. But we'll send some skirmishers up there and get some artillery infantry in behind it. That'll be the end of that. The ammo wagons in this battle have 15,000 in them, so definitely well worth capturing. They'll keep you going for longer because you can afford it. You can just use them all up completely in this battle. You don't care about any of the money you get out of it. So we finally see him. Disappears again. So now we can finally bring the artillery all across. My eventual goal is to try and get into the town so I can hit stuff up around the fort. It doesn't go particularly well. There's weird sight lines and weird terrain stuff, but might as well get it into the city. So you'll notice I'm always trying to send a line of detached skirmishers ahead of my actual infantry, just because they're going to take less damage as they're moving in. You do want to try and have the infantry pretty close behind them, though. You really don't want them fighting on their own for too long. The multiple melee advantage you get doesn't really work out as well against these fortifications. They're just good enough that even like normally you send 4 skirmishers into that and you're going to win anyways, but with the benefits of those fortifications it kind of doesn't work out, so you really want to have some numbers behind you. But now that we've smashed through that, we can start getting into use the woods for cover from the artillery from the south, and we'll start working on wrapping the fort, and we'll just take it from the south at the end of this phase. So now that I pushed them out a little bit, I could stick around a little longer. I'm mostly going to go after the artillery and then basically back out. I can't go too far because of that unit. Having my cavalry chase that guy down, get rid of him. I'm not sure about the best way to go about that fortification sticking out from the fort. Maybe I should just go in right now as opposed to giving it more time. I'm not really sure. But instead I'm going to take the slow way and just sort of go around to the corner, through the line, extend my line a little bit more. The more I think about it, the more I kind of feel like I have enough, like I could just leave the units that did the initial charge and let them recover on their own and send all my other units in to take the fort. This probably would have been the better way to do it. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the best way to deal with this fort is. I like the way I end up doing because it lets me hit it from behind, and I think I can get some snipers on some of the artillery and stuff and get that out of the way first, but unsure. It's a scenario I've only really played 2 or 3 times ever, so hard to say. And this is not a battle I want to play often enough to really completely figure it out. I'm going to be very happy to have this over and done with. Like, in some ways it's a well-designed battle, but it's also long and a frustrating grind through trenches, so won't really be sad to see it go. On the upside, it's more of a challenge than Richmond ever was. Fortunately, Richmond, once you're done with day 1, there's not enough men left on the other side to make day 2 matter. So it's just an extended fast forward fest, more or less. So pulling those units out, decided I'm not going to chase anything more down there. Let's see if I can get the snipers in there. Unfortunately, I can't. I can't get that close. I have to stay in the trees. It's going to limit my options a little bit, but again, I can't tell if those... Okay, yeah, those units are basically moving forward. I keep trying to figure out if I can get them to fire without having them try and walk forward, but like, as far as I can tell, this terrain is completely flat, so I don't know why I'd have to move closer to be able to, I guess, elevate to shoot at the fort, but that's how the game works. So the downside of bringing all this artillery is trying to get it organized. I don't do the best job, but... also, I should probably... Like, I'm behind schedule in the east here. Like, those units needed to have... I think I needed to have broke through earlier. So the first units were basically like where my cavalry is right now, and so I'd be closing the entire thing with only 50 minutes left. I mean, I do have like 5 hours on the second day, or on the second phase down here. So I probably would have been fine even if I didn't take it, but I really wanted to have this situation cleared up so I could only focus on that fort in the west at the very end. So, giving up on getting a full surround and, or well, I guess hitting it from 2 sides and just moving everything up. So we route that one unit, which is nice. It's a little early though. Like we'd really want to route that like just after it gets its last, medium range shell shot off or something. So the infantry would start hit it right now because it's going to recover and be able to fire at me when I actually get to the fort. So you can see I'm always trying to send my 24 pounders in right behind the infantry to really help break the morale of anything in those forts, just because the fortifications are so good. And whenever I get the timing right, it really accelerates that process a lot. And I see that artillery unit in that redoubt up there, and I try to start getting stuff in position to hit it. But what I'm not noticing is that that redoubt has ridiculous sight blockers, so I can't shoot it from the town. I basically, like, if you take a close look at those movement icons, they're telling me I have to literally go up on top of the redoubt before my artillery can shoot it, which is a little ridiculous, but oh well, is what it is. Use a little different strategy here where I just mass charge. I'll say that's slight panic at the current time, and I really didn't need to. I really had plenty of time because I think I end the next phase, or the very last phase, early when I capture the fort, because the phase ticks down as soon as you capture it. So, rushed in a little quick, but we'll take some extra losses here, especially because there's 2 artillery units up and moving there. But we managed to rout one of them, now we've routed both of them. So now we're fine. See, I'm taking artillery fire. I should be getting stuff in cover here. I'm trying to use units to get that unit out of the fortifications, but unfortunately it can fire from a really weird distance, and I'm just not doing enough damage to it. Like, I really needed, in the west here, I really either needed to set my infantry up and really commit to that attack, or just not do it. And I sort of waffle back and forth between it. So we're getting the fort. It's not the greatest, but so you can see I decide to send my units back after sending them forward. Not a great plan, but and I'm taking artillery fire. I mean, those units don't really matter, but it would be better to not do what I'm doing down there and really decide on, come up with a plan and stick to it. Or spend the time to organize all those units further down south so they weren't taking artillery fire. But I keep seeing that unit, that artillery unit in the redoubt, and thinking I should be able to shoot that, and it takes me too long to notice that it's just not going to work. So I sent my cavalry in over there because I really want to clean up that artillery. Everything's routing around them, so they should be relatively safe. And we managed to shatter both of them pretty quickly, which is nice for us. We get charged afterwards, and that one cavalry unit takes it for it. But okay, second to last phase of day 1. So now I'm finally moving in from the west. Probably should have done that earlier. And spreading my line out on the south. And usually the units start to try and retreat back from the fortifications in this phase. So I'm sending all those units up. I see the charges going down, so I sort of start coming across the river, wondering if I can get there without cross it without any resistance. In some ways, it would have been better to collapse in the west sooner and sort of be around on those defense. Like, I could probably be in those trenches the AI is moving to right now, and that would save me some trouble if I had taken all that already. Instead, they're going to get into it, and I'm going to have to fight them for it. Yeah, I would say, yeah, if if you were where I am going to be in about an hour's worth of game time, that's probably where you want to be at the start of this phase. You're playing it a little bit better. Then you wouldn't have to rush things quite as much. Because there's no reason that I waited so long to move in on the west as I did. I should have had stuff in position sooner to do it. You can see, phase changes, they move artillery again. Those units along the back are going to take artillery fire because it's hard to keep them hidden, and it's hard to keep them far enough forward to be useful without being in artillery range. So just sort of the price of being back there, unfortunately. So yeah, again, should have moved forward further. If I'd been in those trenches, then they couldn't have them, and I think would have saved myself a decent number of casualties by doing that. That artillery unit handily stopped in the open because I had some units that could hit, so that means I'm going to be able to kill it a lot faster. So these units in the back are going to sort of take a beating, but most of those are newish units, so I'm just going to start collapsing the pocket. Snipers are helping clear some of that line. But you can see how, like, part of it is these fortifications, like, just don't seem to really get flanked. Like, I'm directly behind them and not getting flanking bonuses, which is kind of ridiculous. I've gotten tired of 7th Veteran not leaving those trenches, so I'm just going to go push him out. I don't think he has much behind him, so it should be fairly safe. So this is pretty normal. You'll get a pocket in that area again. Like, AI likes to have a lot of units mill around there. And if you close that in, you can inflict a lot of casualties without them going back to the fort. So yeah, now we've gotten those fortifications back. And you can see I've left basically like 1 unit in each fort, just in case something sneaks around behind me. I have a chance at getting rid of it. I have absolutely screwed up this battle before by not leaving someone back there, and then a routing unit scorched through, and then I just don't, I just don't have a chance to get something over there in time, and they make it into the fortifications, and it's a giant hassle. So don't do, just leave something there. Save yourself a lot of trouble. The absolute safest way would probably be to leave 3 skirmishers and completely occupy all the fortifications so the AI can't jump into it. But 1 is probably enough, and I'm more or less going to keep them surrounded enough that I'm not too worried about anything sneaking out. Well, I say as a unit sneaks out in the southeast. But I'm sending my cavalry over there to deal with it. Not quite sure how 8.4 rifle got routed there. Like, that unit was getting shot from behind. Well, shot from behind visually. Who knows if it was counting in the game, but would have expected that to have worked. But thankfully I had the cavalry going. Knew it was going to be a problem, so we'll just wipe them out again. And got about a little under 2 hours left. A little worried about time because we've really only got an hour left because we have to have that fort. It's going to take 40 minutes for that contested timer to run down, so we have to have that fort by then. But we pretty much got both sides rolled up. We just got to keep moving, and we'll push through it. There's 4 or 5 artillery units in that fort, which are going to be unpleasant to get dislodged, but we'll manage it. You can see because of the timing, I'm starting to just say, okay, infantry, just move through the position. I don't care what you find. I don't care if you get into melee, just do it. I'll have more units behind you if you start to rout. Yeah, definitely wish I was, I guess, further along in the east there. Like, I'd like to be in the same spot I am in the west, but it just didn't work out that way. But we're about to hit this fort from all sides, so it'll still work out. 24 pounders are coming in up behind. Should be moving those up in the south pretty soon. There we go. But all those units in the west are so small that they just don't last very long. And we've got enough units in the east that they're going to collapse pretty quick as well. Just got to get them out of the way so we can get some fire on that artillery, and then we're fine. Let's see, I'm giving the ones I can afford to, giving manual orders to fire on the artillery again. The rest I'm just telling to move through. But yeah, you definitely would be further ahead of schedule than this. You know, we've only got 40 minutes left, and we've got a decent distance to clear. So what I should be doing when I get to issue those mass orders is you can select all those units and then sort of draw a circle with your, I guess, right-click division placement, whatever that's called, and that'll sort of just force everything to go into a small area. That's another tip from Johnny. He's much more familiar with controlling huge amounts of units in real time than I am, so that's what I see him doing. Seems like it works. Horrible abuse of the system, but seems like it works. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I just don't have time. Everything just has to get in there. I probably take a third of my casualties for the day right here. At least. Maybe half. Not sure. But again, you can see the downsides of not having this like completely synchronized. Like if I was actually coming in from all sides at the same time, like this would be going so much better. But we've gotten them off the walls mostly. We've gotten the artillery routing. You know, pretty sure we're going to have it. This part, I start moving the snipers up to the north because I like the downside of this setup is I don't have any sort of rear line, so they're going to have to go somewhere and they're going to route to the north, which is not the, you know, not the greatest, I guess, but it's probably because I need that flag. It's probably better that they do that than they sit on top of the fort and just fight to the death. Getting a lot of surrenders, much more than I usually do. Copying the fortifications for the melee bonus. Now I'm finally starting to get the infantry moving out and around. Should have done that earlier, but I just wasn't sure if I would. Really worried I wasn't going to take the fort in time. And again, I don't really actually have to pursue this. You know, you could leave a couple of artillery units and a decent allotment of infantry in all the forts. Really, you could just leave the infantry in all the forts, and you could let all this stuff run off and not care about it at all. But, well, we've been trying to kill them all for the entire campaign, so might as well do it here. because, you know, in theory these units need to go back down south to help take that fort, but again, there's like 5 hours in that phase, so we'll have time. Realizing some artillery in the middle that I want to get rid of before it starts doing more. Yeah. This is where, you know, there's too many units doing too many things I'm not controlling particularly well. I really should have a lot more infantry marching up and around to contain them, and it would save me some time later. But instead, I'm starting to send stuff down south because I know I'm going to have to deal with stuff down there. The other thing that would be useful to do is to get more units on top of those supply points. I'm pretty sure those reset on day 2. I actually forgot to check. But you know, the more you can use from them, the less you have to restock on day 2. Though I'm going to have plenty of money left, so it's not going to be a problem. Okay, one more phase to go. So that's the other reason I should have stayed forward, because that unit always pops out of the fortifications, and if they, you know, if I have units in place, I'm actually, maybe I could, I'm not sure what happens. If I had grabbed the skirmishers right then and clicked into the fortification, I wonder if I'd had a unit a little closer, I wonder if I would have been able to take the fortification away from the AI to be able to select it. I would have gotten routed pretty soon because they'd probably get the rear flank on me, but I wonder, that might have worked. So now I gotta send everything down. Resetting everything takes forever. It's just, this is where the lack of control groups and good ways to control this just sort of start to get you. Like, even if you could just select, I don't know what you would really need, but I should probably just be selecting by division at this point and moving them down that way, and then that would save me a lot of time. And it would get my units into some sort of order, because the formation would put the artillery behind, so I probably should have just started clicking by division and moving them that way. That's another one of the things that I could have done with my setup is, I think I talked about this a little bit in the camp video, but if I'd put all my, if I created divisions of just infantry, or like just musket infantry and just long-range artillery, then I could select that division instead of having to try and select everything manually, and that would be a little more efficient in terms of controlling the entire army. But I wanted units to come in a different order in terms of when they got in the field and reinforcements, so that doesn't work with making it easier to control, unfortunately. So would have been real nice if we had control groups in the game. Hopefully it's something that's coming with Ultimate Admiral. I think they've talked about it, but not sure. So, starting to get everything closed off up there, while everything resets in the south. Yeah, because we just have this giant mess that's hard to reset up. I guess if I was more patient, I could just pause the game and spend like 10 minutes finding everything, organizing it all, moving them all over. But it's a long battle, and by this point, I'm just ready for it to be over. This is the type of battle I would probably honestly recommend play the first day, save it, come back to it the next day. You're going to do better on day 2 if you're not actually sitting there for 6 hours straight. In some ways, I probably should have paused in between phases and taken a break and come back to it. And I probably would have played this phase better if I'd done that, but Well, just wanted to power through. Losing more 20-pounders because I didn't realize that losing more 20-pounders and more officers for those 20-pounders, which is almost worse. It's really unfortunate because those are super important for day 2, and I just didn't quite realize where I was moving the units and didn't pay enough attention to them. But thankfully not quite as bad as the first escapade where I lost so many of them. So, and I have 4 hours left. I can probably spend more time setting up. Instead, I just, like, okay, I'm going to solve this problem artillery by just running infantry over it, which is not the greatest plan, but it'll work. And once the artillery is up, then I can move my counter battery up behind it and not get shot anymore. Thankfully, when I lost those last ones, I don't think I lost quite enough to lose a gun, so I'll just be able to restore it for day 2. Not as bad as it could be. Yeah, didn't lose a gun there. And I'm pretty much going to ignore those units in the east there. If you wanted to, you could clean them all up. That's definitely a case where if you're shorter on men, like I'm coming in with about 140k, if you're coming in with like around 100k or something, probably best just leave those units alone. You know, all those units running off in the north, leave them alone. Leave some units behind in those forts for if anything comes back, but otherwise, you know, maximize your force in the area you really need it. Take the forts, leave the stuff that's going to stay in a fortification, and it's not going to shoot you from there, leave it alone. You don't need the kills. All it's going to, you know, even if you play it perfectly, you're going to take some losses killing that stuff. Just, if you're already short on men, if you're coming in with less than me, just leave it. It's not worth it. At least that's my opinion. I haven't actually played it that way, but that would be my guess of how you want it. If you really wanted to minimize casualties, that's how you'd want to do it. I don't really have any detached skirmishers out when I do this. I probably should. That would help. But because I want kills, I'm sending my snipers down there over to deal with those units in the east. I'm not going to wipe them out, but they'll just fire at anything that's in range. We're finally starting to get a cannon, which is good. You want to be careful about going too far west because you're going to start running into stuff in the fortifications there. I guess maybe you could try and clear it out, but I don't think it'd be worthwhile. As always, try and keep your generals on top of your units when they're going to melee like this. The extra melee cover and morale bonus will really help. Probably should have tried moving up the artillery in the south. I guess it's firing at stuff. Those snipers should probably be moving back to one of the built-in supply points to start filling back up for day 2 and recovering for day 2 because you don't get an ammo reset. And I just should have used the infantry up there to keep working on killing off those units. So I think this is where, if I'm remembering right, I should have waited a little bit to capture Fort Washington. Because then I think it's going to end. Those 35 minutes are up. So I'm also halting all these units. I want to pull them back. So there's all these units in the west here. I don't really want to go out in the open to fight them. I have the fort. I don't want to take more losses necessary to kill them off or get them out, because I'm going to push them out of those defenses and they're going to go into the water, but then they're going to trees behind the water, and I'm just going to lose a lot of condition and casualties doing it. I just don't think it's worthwhile. If you're going for the absolute maximum amount of casualties inflicted and don't care about your own, then sure, go for it. But definitely not necessary. Debatable if those snipers should, those 3-star snipers should probably go back. The 1-stars, I'm going to be refilling them on day 2 anyways. It probably would have been better. Like, them probably leaving them here to keep firing at stuff to gain more experience for day 2 probably makes more sense. Not really sure why I'm moving all that artillery over there. I think I wanted to try and shoot at the, I thought I had 3 hours left to shoot at that stuff in the fortifications. But really I should have moved it north, where it would shoot at the fortifications in the rear. So I'm not sure what I was thinking there. Someone was trying to go supply wagon stealing, I think. But no luck for him. So, grabbing a bunch of spare units and dropping them onto supply points. And almost had that wrapped up there. And I realized that people can go into the fortification. But there we go. That was day 1. It was long. And we took about 24,000 casualties, which is more than any single battle so far, and we've only done half of it. So yeah, hope some of that will be helpful for getting through day 1 for you. And I will be back with day 2 soon. Thanks for watching.